This episode is brought to you by Cleaner Shrimp Dentistry. Cleaner Shrimp Dentistry. You've got the teeth, we've got the reef.
This is Wild Green Streams for Ecological Fiends. I'm Rhett.
I'm Curtis.
I'm Iona.
I'm Roy.
And with us today is Vikram Baliga of the Planthropology podcast.
Hello.
And Ellen and Christian Weatherford of the Just the Zoo of Us podcast.
What a party this is. I don't think I've ever been on a podcast with this many people at once.
No,
Us
this is
either.
our biggest.
This feels like a convention.
It's the Wild Green Conference
that only we were invited to. This is a highly exclusive
it's
VIP
very
event.
exclusive conference.
Yeah, there's like 750,000 people in this group, and it's like, nope, 7 people.
7. Yeah.
Still have a dope lanyard though.
Yeah. So many free pens, notepads, keychains.
Yeah, that's
That Artist
something
Alley
that
is gonna be
people
off
don't
the
know
chain.
about the Wild Green Streams podcast is the swag.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in full con style. We're all cosplaying as well today. You can't see us, but I'm in a full pitcher plant costume, complete with a little bowl, using it as a toilet. I'm just like going all out.
Mhm.
I'm
Mine
a
is
mantis
a
shrimp.
fursuit of a botfly.
Oh no.
Oh no. What stage of life botfly are
Larva.
you?
Oh
Of
God.
course.
The worst one. That's the worst one.
Are you? Wait. What stage are the larva?
It's actually a couple's costume where Christian is the host.
To paraphrase the show Community, I can excuse furries, but I draw the line at botflies.
And
Okay.
the costume is actually you're right at the stage where you can emerge. So it's also a performance art piece where you, as the botfly, emerge into your form.
So
It's
since
an
we're
interactive experience.
It
That's what they
is.
do at their live shows.
Yeah.
Uh,
Live
Never
botfly
mind.
experience.
That gives me ideas for other couples costumes, nature themed couples costumes. You have anglerfish.
oh yeah.
You have
Yeah, that's a good one.
So since we're already completely on
Excellent.
topic, let's learn a bit about our guests today. Ellen and Christian, you want to tell us a little bit about yourselves and your show?
Yeah, this is actually a pretty rare occurrence that you got Christian as a guest.
This is true.
Woo.
I'm honored.
I mean, for the most
Highly
exclusive
exclusive.
Wild Green Streams conference, I mean, we just got the highest ticket guests that we could possibly get, you know.
And Christian is a big get. He doesn't go on anything.
Wow.
He don't talk to nobody.
It presents logistical challenges, and then sort of our fashion, we figured those challenges out in the past 10 minutes. So.
Perfect. That's how we do things here too.
But we our voices may sound a little weird because we're recording in the same room side by side together, because as you may have noticed from our sharing a last name, we are married folks. And we do a podcast together called Just the Zoo of Us, which is a podcast where we review animals by rating them out of 10 in different categories. And it's really fun. We alternate between doing episodes together where Christian and I each pick an animal and do our own ratings. And then I talk with guests who come on and give sort of the expertise, like the actual more nuanced opinions that are usually rooted in some more hands-on out in real life experience. Vikram's been on my show. I think my show once. I've been on Vikram's show a couple times now. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm always having expert folks on and talking about animals. It's a really good time.
And Vikram is a little exception for the show, I would expect, because Vikram is an expert on plants.
Every now and then, Ellen's like, I need something real boring for the show, so let's talk about plants. We've just had too many good guests. No,
I need to throw a bone to the people that listen to the podcast to fall asleep to. Like,
Yeah.
I need to give them a softball.
Oh
It's
man.
It's kind of like ASMR, but not in a good way.
People who listen to your plant episodes though to try to fall asleep probably have like horrifying nightmares because we talk about such awful, terrible things.
I'm like eating people and stuff. Like if you were tiny,
Mhm.
Wait,
Uh,
go on.
Is that my introduction? I think that's my introduction. Like, here's this guy and he sucks at podcasts.
No, Vikram is also a great podcaster. What is your show about?
So I've got a show called Planthropology, and I talk to people in the sort of green science space. So plant people, water people, which I think are called mermaids. People that
Sirens.
Sirens, yeah.
Selkies.
Actual fish. I interview people in the plant sciences. I talk about different plant things. I've gotten to be on this show a couple of times talking about petunias and everything turning into cabbage or crabs. I think that those have been our past episodes.
Brassica.
Yep.
Well, Vikram's almost on our show. For some reason, you always wind up coming on for convergent evolution-y things. Like that's what we wind up having you on for. And then the other thing concerning you is that you're properly Dr. Vikram Baliga. And what is it that you study and how does that all go?
So I study, I'm a horticulturist. So I have a PhD in horticulture. I study like urban water conservation and small acreage food production, those kinds of things, food, water, plants. And I just, nerd out about that a lot.
A TikTok menace also.
A menace.
that's
Yes.
TikTok
Yes,
menace.
I am. That is correct.
On TikTok, you're a big fan of people using really amazing and completely reliable life hacks often involving bananas.
Usually bananas. Yes. Usually a big fan. I really enjoy it. Part of me likes to think there's like a group of 5-minute craftspeople that's like plotting my death out there somewhere in a really weird way. Like
Using bananas, probably.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm sure.
Well, the good news is if
potassium.
5-minute crafts tries to do it, it'll never actually work in real life. So
Yeah.
What,
It'll take way longer than 5 minutes anyway, so you'll have plenty of time
what's
to run.
what's a little great on camera though? What's
Yeah.
an example of a banana life hack that you have terrorized? I guess that you've corrected.
So my favorite one to yell about is banana water, where they're like, we're going to put this banana peel in water and we're going to let it sit for 15 minutes and then it's going to solve all of your plant problems. The plant problem it solves is not having gnats. That's how you get gnats. It's a gnat farm.
Do you not have enough gnats? We're gonna teach you how to solve that.
It's not a plant life hack at all. It's an insect life hack.
It
We
is
were
disguised as
just
a plant hack.
talking before, we were chatting a little bit before you guys came on about Venus flytraps, and like if you got a Venus flytrap to eat all the, like if you had a fruit fly infestation to eat all of them, and then it's like all the fruit flies are gone, it's like, oh no, like what am I going to feed my Venus flytrap? This will be the perfect trick. You will farm more gnats to feed your Venus flytrap. It's a great hack.
It's perfect.
The problem here is it takes like several days, if not a week, for them to reopen. So you're going to get gnats at a rate that the Venus flytrap can't keep up.
So then you just stagger your Venus flytraps. So then like one eats, it's like if you like sing in a round, it's like your Venus flytraps are eating them in a round.
If you look at it
maybe
over the
5-minute
course,
crafts was just like the account is run by a bunch of gnats in a trench coat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
if you look at it over the course of a year, you average out to an acceptable number of gnats in your house. You're playing the long game.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Nice.
Ellen and Christian, how do you rate things? Like what are the axes that you rate organisms on?
So we do effectiveness, which is how well the animal is physically adapted to like do the things it's trying to do. So maybe if it's like a predatory animal, it's maybe like tools that it has to catch its prey, or if it's a prey animal, ways that it can evade becoming prey, things like that. And then there's ingenuity, which is behavior. So like clever ways the animal is like solving problems that it faces in its life. And then probably my favorite category is aesthetics, which is just pure vibes. It's just how nice the animal is to look at
Does it pass
personally.
the vibe check?
Yeah, it's pure just it's
It's
from the hip.
it's all very scientific.
It's extremely rigorous, peer reviewed.
I mean, I
but
did
it's all
see
solid.
a tweet or something, which is, the most official source. It said like the most official unit of measurement is just eyeballing it. So, you guys are right up there, scientific integrity.
I'm a scientist, and I can say is like you just look at things, and then you say what the thing is that you're looking at, and that's it. That's science. Congrats.
That is
Every once in a while, every once in a while, you put math in it, and
I
then
miss I wish it was still, because we've had to go back and read like papers from like the 50s, 60s, 70s to try to get information about some of these animals, and so many of these papers are just based on like, this is a thing I saw once. It's like, one time I saw this bird eating a frog. There you go, we'll put this in the journal.
Yeah, if you go back further, I was listening to your episode about the marine iguanas, Oh, Charles Darwin was just yeeting green iguanas into the ocean to study whether or not why they
Wasn't it marine iguanas?
What did I say?
Green.
Marine.
Oh,
Yeah, word rhyme. And you also talked about green iguanas. So and we've been talking about green things.
I mean,
Marine
that is
iguanas,
very funny to imagine. He saw a marine iguana and then was like, all iguanas must do this. And then just start throwing green iguanas into the ocean. Like, Charles Darwin, no.
No, Chuck, stop. We made a mistake.
Chuck, please.
He sees and this like heads up display comes on that's like iguana detected, throw in water. Like he goes like sleeper agent.
He was
The man has become a
Darwin.
maniac.
He was doing a Lamarckian speed run.
Exactly.
That's when he got
Exactly.
suspicious. He's like, they don't seem to be getting better at swimming.
Hold on.
But it's like,
None of this adds up.
then you read his writing on marine iguanas, and he was like,
Mhm.
man, these guys are fugly as hell. Like this is like he's like the lowest form of life. I don't get them. I'm just gonna check them in the ocean, see what happens.
Like
I'm
marine
sorry,
iguanas
I'm
are
sorry,
fugly sluts. Don't trust them.
Don't trust them.
Chuck, I'm sorry, they're not as pretty as your barnacles or
This
whatever.
is
you know,
a
you're writing
direct.
about.
This is
Like,
these are direct quotes. No joke. Hideous looking, most disgusting, clumsy lizards.
Yeah.
But
Beautifully
Same.
written,
I mean,
Yeah.
but yeah,
An expertly crafted roast.
Can't
Yeah.
be right about
Since-
everything.
since we explained everything but why Charles Darwin was literally chucking sea creatures into the ocean.
just for the vibes. Again,
yeah.
no science, only vibes.
That's
To
how
him,
we
they
test
didn't
everything
pass
on
the
those
vibe check.
3 variables, and he was just doing it for vibes.
Yeah.
I feel like
I mean,
I have two sons, and it is incredibly on brand for like a boy to just show up on an island unsupervised and be like, what can I throw into the ocean? Like, how can I
mean,
get this into the water immediately?
Mhm.
The actual
Exactly,
reasoning
yeah.
was, or the not reasoning, because this is like defies reason to be like, hey, that thing goes in the water. What happens if I throw it in the water? but if I'm remembering correctly from your episode, the actual reason was the actual experiment, if we can call it that. Yeah, we'll call it that. Was that
There was no control group here.
was that he was testing the fact that they actually didn't like being in the ocean because there weren't predators on land, but there were predators in the ocean, right?
Right. So he noticed after chasing them, they wouldn't run into the water. They would just kind of
Right.
stand at the edge of a cliff or something. And just, well, what happens next?
But
Because they know,
also,
like, whatever's in the water is going to be a much bigger threat to them.
Yeah, like,
Mhm.
you know, bull shark or Charles Darwin.
Apex
Between the two,
predator.
I think I have
Yeah.
a better chance fighting Charles Darwin.
Bull shark or bully.
I'll take
Yeah.
my chances.
Would you rather
but,
fight
but
10?
also, but also we know that like there are predators on land. You have those like Galapagos racers, those racer snakes,
Mhm.
and we like chase
true.
after them once we'll chase after them after they hatch, and you have to be like, all right, we have to book it, and we have to book it into the ocean.
Greatest moment in nature documentary history.
Yeah, that's
I
like
was
one
about
of
to
the-
say that might actually be the greatest sequence ever filmed in nature
Mhm.
documentaries. Like,
It
if
won an Emmy.
yeah,
I'm gonna take it a step further. The greatest sequence ever filmed.
Yeah.
Period.
Period.
Hard agree. Imagine
Yeah.
like you're a little baby marine iguana and you make it through that absolutely harrowing experience of having to run for your absolute life. And you make it through a field of literal snakes to survive hatching and making it to the ocean. And then you get thrown off a cliff by Charles Darwin.
My symbol.
You've gone through so much. And then
Just
this
when you
random
thought you were
guy,
safe.
It's
You
like
get,
that-
you get,
some
you get,
dude.
you get thrown into the ocean by a nepo baby, by a nepotism baby. Just like
Just standing there, you're like, oh, come on.
it's like that Lion King edit that like been gifed to death of Rafiki just chucking Simba off of Pride Rock.
Eating him off the cliff.
Yeah.
Would you rather fight
Yeah.
10 bull sharks or 100 Charles Darwins? And does that answer change if you're an iguana?
what year am I fighting Charles in?
Right.
Yeah, I think it is.
ooh, yeah.
We're talking.
It was
Are we fighting on land or in the water? Because I will take 10 bull
doing-
sharks on
Doing
land.
spry and exercised 1830s Charles Darwin or like 1860
I-
Charles Darwin?
Are we talking?
I
Are we
mean,
talking
let's-
long beard or mutton chops?
Yeah.
Definitely mutton chops.
Definitely.
Always
Let's-
default to mutton chops.
Yeah, let's be real. Like Charles Darwin, Chuck was like a sickly man. Like he didn't become a doctor because he got squeamish at the sight of blood. And like when he was on the Beagle, he kept getting sick. He kept getting seasick while he was on the ship and everything. I don't know.
You
I
know
think I could take him
what?
on.
He's valid. But he didn't
yeah.
have to take it out on the iguanas. He's like,
Sometimes
if
you
I
gotta
can't
tell
be
him
in the
that.
sea,
Yeah.
you have to.
Exactly.
You think he ain't
No,
got hands though?
Normalize tummy aches.
I'll show him the origin
Exactly.
of these
You know who
hands.
I know ain't got hands is a bull shark. So that's a pretty good
Yeah.
argument.
I mean, how long did it take him to write that book? You know. Meanwhile, like Alfred Russel Wallace is out in like Sulawesi or whatever. You know, like, oh, I get it, and like writes a single page.
Gets
This
one
is the
fever
Darwin.
and figures it out.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, oh yeah, I figured it out. And he writes like a 1-page letter and it's like, hey, Chuck, I figured it out. Here's the deal. And like Chuck is like, oh no, I gotta publish this. This book I've been sitting on for 20 years. I gotta publish it.
It's like that tweet that rap battles are just grown men writing poems at each other.
Yeah.
So true.
I was thinking of like a young feral Alfred Russel Wallace in Indonesia, and an older, like more domesticated Charles Darwin up in his like little villa in England.
I mean,
And it's
but
just like sixth grade.
what is more relatable than sitting on a project for 20 years and the only thing
Exactly.
that finally kicks you into gear is someone else like rushing to publish it?
Exactly.
Like you could have done this 20 years ago and like you like need the fire lit under your ass to like get it done. Like I get
Exactly.
I also
Exactly.
thrive on deadlines.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen the man's writing on feeling very stupid and very poorly and hating everything and
I
everyone.
love that.
And
love
I
that
feel like
one.
the man had
So
bars
great.
for sure, but
Yeah.
also I feel like most of his beef was directed inward. It seems like
Yeah.
like, this guy was fighting himself.
Yeah. Well, also it's like his dad, like his family, like he came from a lineage of like scientists. Like his grandfather, Erasmus Darwin, was one of the OG like evolutionary science people. Like with like before Lamarck even, like he put in a lot of the ideas. And his dad was like a famous doctor, like he was a famous English doctor. And like Darwin was like, oh, I'm gonna be like a doctor like my dad or a scientist like my grandfather. And that didn't happen. And his dad was like, what a fucking disappointment. I'm gonna put you on this fucking boat. Yeah, get on this fucking boat. Figure out what you want to do with your fucking life. And that's probably part of it.
So Vikram, in the world in general, and also in this episode so far, there's a heavy bias towards talking about animals.
Yeah.
So what is a pitch for plants? And then also what's a cool
Picture
plant that we
plants?
should talk about?
Oh, the pitcher plant and the related shrews. I mean, I'm looking right at Curtis. It was really impressive, man. Something. So there are plants that can literally die for years, and then it rains, and they're just like, nah, fine, everything's okay. Everything's okay.
Listen, we've all had a dramatic episode.
The house plant.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've all, it's like, I think if it's more or less impressive, like a toad or something that hangs out in the soil for a while and it rains and it pops up, and I'm like, yeah, I can still hop and things like that, or a cicada that comes out every couple of decades to scream. But no, so one of my plants that I think is very cool, and that makes the case that plants are equally cool, almost as cool, something, is the resurrection plant. It's I'm gonna definitely pronounce this name wrong. Selaginella lepidophylla.
Cool.
I feel so
And-
validated that you also have no idea how to pronounce scientific.
Oh, no, do you know times I've
Incredibly
accidentally
comforting.
summoned a demon trying to teach like
I know. It
class
happens
all the
all
time?
the time.
It's
Oh.
really
I
annoying.
love when I'm watching like a nature documentary and I hear somebody pronounce a dinosaur that I've like known about since I was 5 years old, and I'm like, that's how you say it.
That's me watching the Pokemon anime, and every time they say a Pokemon, I'm like, oh no,
Not
I've
again.
been saying it wrong this whole time.
Even the way people say Pokemon is different from how I said it naturally. Like I always pronounced it Pokemon, like
Me
yeah, I
too.
say Pokemon.
like you're poking things.
But yes, the resurrection.
It's the accent.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we're talking about plants. Okay. So this plant, it's this weird looking little feathery leaved plant. It's actually, the name Lepidophylla actually means scale leaf. Like a lepidopteran is, a scale wing. It's a weird mashup of Greek and Latin, like our good friend Linnaeus loved to do. And it can essentially, when it gets dry, it lives in the desert. It folds up into the crunchy looking brown ball, and it just hangs out. And it
Oh, I've raised one of these. They sell them. They call them dinosaur plants for
Yeah.
kids, and they sell them in like science kits.
Yeah, they're really cool. And then another name is the false rose of Jericho. Rose of Jericho is a similar plant that when you put water on it, it sort of unfolds, but that one never like completely desiccates. Like the resurrection plant can get, I think they said like between 95 and 99% like water loss, like no water left in,
Whoa.
Wow.
and it'll sit there for, I've seen estimates up to 15 or 20 years
Wow.
waiting for enough water. And then You stick it in water, and in like 3 hours, it unfolds, it rehydrates. And then in a couple of days, it starts producing chlorophyll again. It'll start flowering, and then it'll go for a few months until it dries out too much and it closes up again. And they only get like 5 centimeters tall by maybe 15, 20 centimeters wide. Just this little mat of mostly dead stuff. And then every now and then it's like, just kidding, I was only mostly dead. They're really cool. And they'll do it over and over again. They live in just incredibly harsh climates. And if plants do one thing well, it's to be confusing and to survive incredibly weird situations.
I feel like if plants do one thing well, it's either dying from like just being like put in a room that's 1 degree colder, or like lasting until the heat death of the universe.
Yeah.
Looking at you, fiddle leaf fig. You look at them weird, and all the leaves fall off.
I also, one of the other plants that I like, it's the resurrection fern, which we have a lot in like the Southeast, which I like because it's cute and fun. And like, you'll see it, like I'll be walking around and we haven't had any rain for a while, and it's like all like brown and really dark. And then like we get a big rain, and then the next day it's just like super green and leafy. But I also love it because the name of it, which I could be butchering the Latin, we'll see if a demon appears in my room, is Pleopeltis polypoidioides, which is just like such a fun word to say. Polypoidioides.
It's like somebody was challenged to put as many peas in a binomial as possible. And they're like, oh, I got this.
Just like more oidioides at the end of Latin names. I don't know what it means, but it sounds fantastic. And
they were coming up with it and tripped and fell down the stairs in the middle of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's your phone adds the extra clause to your word you're trying to put in, and you're just like, it looks fine.
The resurrection fern was written by Doodle Bob from that SpongeBob episode.
Exactly.
Ben, you like tongue twister, like Polly picked a peck of Pleopeltis polypoidioides.
Yeah.
Well, I associate resurrection ferns with growing in like on top of the branches of southern live oak trees. And those things can get massive. So good luck picking a peck of those, because they're like 30 feet up off the ground.
You gotta be really determined.
I have never been clear on how much a peck is. I think
it's either greater than or less than a bushel.
Yes, those are the options.
Yeah. Well, it could be equal to a bushel also.
How many giraffes is that?
How many blue whales?
How many blue whales? How many football fields?
What in Ellen, I think a metric you should add to your show is how big the animal is in like either bananas or washing machines.
Well, we used to do chickens. We did chickens for a long time.
Standard.
We used to measure things like the sizes of things in chickens, and then I forgot to do it for a while, and then it just kind of like will pop up every once in a while.
Yeah, every once in a while we'll talk about something that is of the magnitude of a chicken.
I was describing, I have a friend who was asking how big a woodcock was, and I said it was about the size of a grapefruit, like a big grapefruit. So just who needs standard units of measurements? Just the closest thing you've got there.
That's why we've been fighting the metric system so hard.
Is that the Meatberg?
It's the units of eyeball in it.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, he's got eyeball it. Yeah, I just looked up what a peck is. It's English, so that's how you know it. Yeah, but it's more than I thought. It's 14 pounds.
Whoa!
You know how much a bushel is?
A lot. It's a volume, right?
It depends, right?
Bushel. It depends on what you're picking. Like if a bushel of apples is 45 pounds.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So you gotta,
That's still a lot of apples.
This says
apples are really dead.
I think
there's not that many apples.
I think a peck, I looked it up, it says a peck is about 8 quarts, but this also says like just over 2 gallons. This says 8 dry quarts.
Dry quarts.
As opposed to wet quarts, I guess.
I was like, give me a dry quart of milk. Give me a dry quart of milk.
I'm unclear about if it's a measure of weight or if it's a measure of volume. This says a peck of
time.
Can I have a dry peck of water?
Yeah, 2 gallons of apples, 10 to 12 pounds. 12 parsecs.
I don't know. Are you sure it says quart or cork? Maybe you're reading cork. Maybe it's
quarks.
That's what I get.
Yeah.
That's what I messed
up.
up.
It's much smaller than you think.
Much smaller. Easy, super easy to pick a peck of those.
Yeah, exactly.
Easy peasy.
So with the resurrection plant rather than the fern, do their roots retain water over time, or does the entire plant just totally desiccate?
So their roots do retain a little bit of water. They've got special scaly structures on their leaves that just kind of shut down. So they curl up, they sort of circle the wagons. The roots will retain a little bit of water in some special structures that are unique. Essentially, they have sort of a sugar-rich compound that they deposit in the cells. And one of the things that kills plants so quickly when they start to desiccate is salt accumulation. As water, like out, salt deposits build up in the cells, which dries them out further, and the problem just gets worse and worse. So they have a special compound in their cells that resists salt accumulation. It keeps the salt out. So they can just kind of stay in place with this special like sugary gel-like substance for years and years and years. And it's thought that they can resist fires, they can resist even some grazing and all kinds of just crazy things, just by concentrating all these sugars and things in the roots and in the crown of the plant where it meets. And then it rains again, and they're like, yeah, here we are. We're good to go. Let's do the thing.
I love that.
It's incredible.
Cool.
I bet when the rains finally come again, that plant has so many apology emails to send out.
Yeah.
Spend a couple weeks like, hey, listen.
Sorry, I was having a really hard time.
I was
really going
desiccated
through a
for the last
lot.
15 years.
Basically.
Took a real long nap.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Does
I
anyone
just
here
saw
know-
this.
Does anyone here know what tardigrades use when they desiccate? Like, do they have a similar process they undergo, or is
I
it?
did look up they can lose up to 97% of water, but I don't know anything about the biomechanics going on.
Right.
We should interview a tardigrade and ask them.
Wood frogs are
We should.
nuts.
I love wood frogs.
I
It's
thought
just
you were going
like-
to say a tardigrade expert, Iona, but I like going straight to the source.
Yeah, I wanted straight from the tardigrade's mouth, you know?
That'd
Well,
be
the
firsthand.
biggest part that's going to be very difficult is first we need to figure out how to engineer a microscopic microphone or microphone, if you will. That's really the only thing that's
That's the only
been
barrier.
holding us back from talking to tardigrades.
Fair. Although I did see, I don't remember, this was like a few years ago, that researchers had made an incredibly minute telephone, and they used it to, microphone, and they used it to, they called them, and they used it to record snails.
Ooh.
But the thing is, the snails sounded to me anyway exactly how I would expect, which is just kind of like a noise.
There are like ASMR videos on YouTube of snails crunching on like lettuce and
Ooh,
like
interesting.
vegetation and fruit and stuff. And it's what you would think. It's like a kind of sound.
I like
'cause
when
they're,
things
like,
sound
raising it
exactly.
with the radula.
I like when things sound exactly like what you think they're gonna
Yeah.
sound like. Because also so many things sound absolutely nothing like you think they would sound
Just
like.
nothing. Yeah.
Like you've ever
Oh.
heard a bobcat? Oh my gosh, it sounds like a
Horrifying.
person screaming, and you're like, "Are you okay?" And they're like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
just like doing bobcat things, or like foxes, just like or like funky birds."
Koalas.
Yeah,
Koalas, I think,
all-
are the worst offender.
What do
Yeah.
koalas
Yeah,
sound like?
yeah.
Christian,
sound
can I get
like
an impression
a-
of
No,
the-
I seem to have forgotten.
What is a koala?
It is
sound
not.
like?
It's
It
like
sounds
it's like a guttural war cry.
Yeah, it sounds like a gorilla ogre troll that's like also being inflated with air and then like hitting the stomach with a sledgehammer.
I mean, they're eating.
Mm.
Very
Note to
specific.
self for when I'm editing this. Put
I mean,
in
you're
the
eating-
sound of
you're
a
eating-
koala.
Yeah.
See how close Curtis was?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Vote
mean,
in
they're
the
eating
comments if
eucalyptus
you
leaves all
think
day.
Curtis described it well enough or not.
I mean, they're eating eucalyptus leaves all day. They're sleeping all the time. They're probably not getting a lot of workout. Like, I imagine they have a lot of gas, eating all those leaves.
They sound like me
Like-
trying to get out of a recliner. Ugh.
Yeah.
You know what
Also-
animal sounds absolutely nothing like I would have ever imagined it sounded is a manatee. They squeak like a mouse.
Sound nothing
I've
like a
never-
sweet
I don't
potato.
know
I've
if I've
heard one,
ever
like-
heard them squeak.
Oh, But I also don't know if I've ever been like close enough to one while it was out of the water.
I
to hear it.
had the opportunity to in Florida, the USGS does these manatee health checks every year where they when it gets colder in the winter, the water in the spring stays the same temperature, so the manatees don't actually have a lot of blubber. They're just like full of gas, so they don't really like the cold weather. So they go into the springs that are the constant temperature, and so they're warmer, and so they're able to like catch them, to assess them, to do some health checks. And so I got to help out on one of those days. And like for all of the manatees that were there, I don't think any of them made any noise, at least not when I was there.
Yeah.
But I mean, I believe you, Rhett. I'm just like sad that I didn't get to hear it.
I think that it might be a product of being underwater, partly. Like either the water makes it sound that way, or
It's a click thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or it travels better, so they optimize for that. But
Mhm.
it literally, it's just up like a, like that's what it sounds like.
A hiccup.
That wasn't red. That was the manatee recording.
Yeah, that was the real one.
My favorite animals that don't sound like what you think they would sound like are rhinos and porcupines.
Porcupines
Rhinos
are
sound
amazing.
like almost like what you described the manatee as. It's just like this high pitched thing.
Close to where
and then,
we live in northern Florida, there is a conservation center called White Oak Conservation Center, and they have a bunch of rhinos there. And I read that you may need to help me out with this. They used the sounds that like cinematographers for, was it Game of Thrones or was it Star Wars?
It might have been,
I think it was Game of Thrones.
maybe, yeah.
They went to White Oak and took a bunch of recordings of the bunch of like the rhinos and all the different animals that live there, and used those recordings to make the sounds of I think it was the dragons in Game of Thrones.
That's
so
really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it's like really close to where we live, which is really cool.
I can't believe you guys live near celebrities who they have been in some famous TV shows.
Yeah.
I know.
Who's your
it's
favorite
incredible.
voice actor? It's the rhino at White Oak.
I want to see that credit.
It was either the dragon from Game of Thrones, or I think it was maybe like a Star Wars that possibly that it was in.
I mean, for some of those fantasy characters, it's really like the animals, it's really interesting to like, if there's any, I love watching the behind the scenes of things. And so whenever they talk about how they make those creature sounds, that they like a lot of times layer them. So they're like, this is like a bear and also like an alligator and also like some weird bird. And they all like threw it together to create like,
it's not just the creatures too. The
fantasy animal here.
The TIE fighters in Star Wars, if you can picture that scream, that's an elephant put out like a really bizarre pitch.
Really?
Oh, is it really?
That's cool.
That's cool. Sounds are weird. Also, if anyone is interested, it turns out, according to a 2-second Google search, tardigrades can desiccate because of some funky folded proteins that they have. Don't know how, but that's what they said.
Iona, do you know what those proteins are called?
Sonic Hedgehog?
No. Not Sonic Hedgehog. That's a different thing.
My favorite.
But no,
that is a real protein, though.
Yeah.
It's a group of proteins that are referred to as tardigrade disordered proteins.
That's what it said. TDPs.
TDPs. Yeah, exactly. Sonic Hedgehog
I
is
was
a
going to
different
ask you if there are any plants that make sounds.
So sort of. There was a video going around on TikTok or something a while back where someone was like filming a bed of succulents after a rain, and it just sounded like high-pitched screaming. It was like, and that was mostly like air coming out of the soil. But there is a thought that when some plants are damaged, like they're attacked by a herbivore or something like that, they keep trying to like transpire and move water through the system, and essentially air just starts coming out all the little cut veins in the leaves. Is a thought that there are some ultrasonic sounds that come out that other plants might be able to detect in certain ways and trigger defense responses. Like we know they do that with like volatile organic compounds and stuff when they're being predated on. They put stuff in the air and other plants start, like they have receptors for that start sort of preparing themselves to be attacked by something. We know they can kind of see each other through green light receptors on the leaves, so they know where other plants are so they don't grow into them as much, especially big species of trees. And there are some thoughts that they may be able to hear, like they can hear a bumblebee coming, and depending on the type of bee approaching, they will release different amounts of nectar based on the buzz pattern. And so they do have some kind of detector for vibrations. So plant communication's a whole other super wild thing that will like make you worry a little bit if you think too much about it. Like they're talking about us and we don't know what they're saying, and there's no way for us to know what they're saying.
Man, I thought I heard some whispers at night, but no one was here. But it must have been all the plants on my windowsill saying mean things about me. Like, you don't water us enough.
I like this idea of plants talking because it also invites the possibility of awkward plants, like plants that like can't read social cues correctly. Like they're listening to like certain bees and they're like, oh, I gotta produce this nectar, and it's the wrong type. And I was like, oh no,
what have I done?
I'm so embarrassed.
Sorry, can I just take that back, please? I mean, plants talk. I've seen Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah.
That's what they're all saying all the time. They all say "feed me Seymour," and it's real weird. Nobody knows why.
I've watched that. I've seen that Harley Quinn show. I know how plants are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's always the
Glad to hear
Venus
they scream.
flytraps that talk.
That's very comforting.
It's always the Venus fly. It's always trees or Venus flytraps that talk in cartoons. Name one other, or not even cartoons, but just in fiction. Name a fictional plant character that can talk that is not a Venus flytrap or a tree.
Larry
Always.
the cucumber.
That one tree from Pocahontas.
True. Veggie Tales.
Veggie Tales blows that question
Tales, yeah.
out of the water. They're
Which,
eating
again,
any vegetable.
I've
Yeah.
said this before, but most of the characters in Veggie Tales are actually fruits, but Fruity Tales would not have played well with the target demographic.
I mean, maybe that's what the next Wild Green Memes venture is, to make an animated show where the characters talk, but the characters are only plants. And none of them, also like all the characters talk except not the trees and not Venus flytraps. So it's like the grasses, the shrubs,
Grass that can talk is a
mosses.
terrifying idea to me. There's
I
just so
mean,
much of it.
And also, like, you ever been into like a field with like really tall grass and it's windy and it sounds like shh?
They're all whispering. They're actually whispering.
They're
Yeah.
gossiping. They're gossiping about lawns.
Mhm.
And like, look at this
Venus
grass.
flytrap.
So and
Not
so
even- not
mows
even a
their
foot
lawn
tall.
3 times a week.
Mm.
Yeah.
With the
Well, now-
Venus flytrap, there's a very clear place on the Venus flytrap where something analogous to a mouth would be.
Yes.
So like
Yeah.
that gives you an in if you're animating them, right?
True.
Like they already have something that looks like a mouth. It's pretty easy to animate that in a way that looks like talking. If you're trying to animate like grass, like what part is gonna move to make the words?
They actually just have their mouths are actually all the stomata that the plants have.
Yeah,
So
that's
they
what
just
it
have
is,
like
yeah.
a terrifying amount of like little tiny mouths
A
covering the
biblically
plant.
accurate grass.
Yeah.
A biblically accurate
Be
grass.
not
exactly.
afraid.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you just do what like Pokemon do, and you just like draw an eyes and a mouth on the thing, and it's like, yeah, it works. Yeah, it turns
Mhm,
out
it's
no,
fine.
no one's gonna
It's
question this.
Pokemon.
No one's gonna
Don't
question
think too
this.
much about
Like,
it.
That's an ice
Yeah,
cream
exactly.
cone. How is that alive?
Don't question.
Don't talk about. Don't worry about it.
We don't
Or
think about the
suspending
ice cream
disbelief.
cone Pokemon.
Mhm.
No question.
No question. It'll be
Yeah.
fine.
And you
So-
have all those talking Pokemon.
So actually, a question Iona came up with. Wait, Iona, do you want to ask the question you came up with?
I would love to ask the question that I came up with, Rhett. Thank you. I was going to ask, is there anything that you have discovered in your podcasting career that you have learned that you did not expect to learn? Because like you might go into it thinking like, oh, I'm going to like learn how to like, put like cool audio things together. And it's like, oh, I just learned how to like scrub background audio of like background sounds like super efficiently, or like either about the process of making podcast or about the content that you have made. Is there anything that you learned that you're like, oh, I didn't think that this would be knowledge that I now have when you were going into it?
Ellen, y'all go first.
Oh no. Well, okay, so we came into this with literally no media creation experience, like literally just bought some microphones off Amazon and hit record and to see what would happen. So like a lot of this has been learning on the fly. Learning how to create like room acoustics, like learning how to sort of treat the room for better acoustics has been somewhat challenging. Recording it, something that I think, because I do the editing for the podcast, and something that has been a real learning process over time has been learning how much and how little to edit, because I do things like take out fillers and take out like pauses or like false starts in sentences. So I edit kind of aggressively, but then I've also had to learn over time how much is too much editing, like how much makes it sound over edited and robotic and not flow naturally. So like finding a middle ground between like polishing it but not making it sound too polished, that has been something kind of like on the technical end of things. As far as like things we've actually learned, I learn something new every single episode that we do. There's not a single episode that we make that I'm not like, holy shit, what? It's like every episode we learn something, but like content wise. But technically, I think it's just been like how much of the editing process is things that can't necessarily be taught. Like you have to just kind of get a feel for it. You have to be like, how much of this pause do I want to leave in? Like how much filler do I want to leave in, and how much can I take out? And I don't know, things like that, like just thinking very analytically about what you're taking in and what you're leaving in.
Yeah, that's cool and makes sense. Like I didn't realize that should have occurred to me like, before we started the podcast. I didn't think people edited podcasts at all. I thought they just like, because it sounded great and I couldn't see any edits. Like if you're like watching a TV show, you can see the edits and you can see the cuts.
Right.
So like I was just like, it just to me sounded like one clean audio. But then I was like, I heard, and on some podcasts they were talking about how they edited it, and I was like, oh wait, that like makes sense. Of course that you would edit it. But for a long time, I was just like, oh my gosh, they just like talk and sound perfect. Nope, there's a lot of work that goes into that on the back end.
And I
After
think that is
doing
what
this-
makes it makes it sound so deceptively easy,
Mhm.
because when people don't see that side of like how much you're editing, they might think, oh, you just hit record and talk and that's it, that's making the podcast, but they don't see all of the work that goes in behind the scenes to make it sound good. So I think like when we started, we'd been listening to professionally produced podcasts forever and they sounded fantastic and sounded so effortless, and then when we made it ourselves, I was like, why does mine sound so bad?
Yeah.
Oh
think
wait, they have people that this is their job.
after doing this for a couple years and editing for mostly the same people over time, I can tell visually, I can see what an looks like for Curtis versus Leroy versus me versus Iona on the track when I'm editing. Like I'll just zoom to that and cut it out and I'll be like, yep, that was one.
Oh, that's cool. That's fun.
But
Vikram, how about you?
So I have learned that there are a few things I realized I would hate. Like, how do I say this? I did not realize how much I would hate trying to write show notes for an episode. It's my, like, I hate it. I sit down and like, I've recorded the episode, I've edited it, I've gotten it posted. And then I'm like, oh, I have to say like more words about this. What do I say about this? Like, I just talked to this person for an hour and a half. How do I summarize this in like 4 sentences so that someone reads that? And I'm like, yeah, I'll listen. I don't know. I hate writing show notes. But also, I think one thing that I realized is how much of the process of putting out a podcast is like clerical kind of stuff. That's maybe not the right word, but like scheduling and putting together an episode and finding time to record. It's like the doing it part of it. Like I love interviewing people. I even kind of enjoy the editing because I forget things about the episode after we've recorded, and I sort of get to pull cool things out of it again and learn a lot. But just sort of the administrative side of putting out something for years and years and trying to figure out where you're going to go. Because I think you don't just tell a story within like a single episode. You sort of tell a story with the whole body of work and the whole show and how to like make that make sense. Something that I didn't anticipate having to like really think about. From the subject matter side, I interviewed a guest early on, like 2.5 years ago. In fact, I yesterday had the like 3rd anniversary of the show. And so
congratulations.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Like seeing how far it's come is crazy. But one of my early guests is a friend of mine who right now is studying like mixed lawns, like clover lawns, and having pollinator plants and species diversity and stuff in place of like monoculture lawns. But her master's degree was in invasive worms, like crazy worms or something. And I like had no concept of that as a thing. She was like, oh yeah, no, these worms are terrible. I'm like, what is that? Like, they're earthworms. Aren't all earthworms good? She's like, oh no, they
classic horticulturalist.
Oh yeah, I had no idea. Like they eat the dirt and they don't eat, but they eat the plant material, they make the poop, the dirt gets better, whatever. But then like she went on this whole thing and taught me about like invasive worms and having to do like worm control in the soil and in the landscape. And that for one just blew my mind. Like that was
Vikram.
It's a very specific thing. But
Vikram, I'd like to read you a meme that was on our page during the kind of initial, I mean, it's never-ending trend of would you still love me if I were a worm? And it said, got a map of the invasive earthworm range in the US and Canada, and I guess part of Mexico too. And it says, PSA, if you were an earthworm outside of your native range, I would find it a little harder to love you.
Christian, would you still love me if I was a worm? That was a long pause. That was lengthy.
Has he said
talking about the invasive ones? I was thinking of the hammerhead worm that we see sometimes.
Oh, those
all
are
my homies
crazy.
hate hammerhead flatworms. Yeah. So you would
you
not
didn't answer
love
the
me
question.
if I was a hammerhead. That was a tactical
diversion.
dodge.
Yeah.
It was a very well planned dodge until it wasn't.
So I'm hearing a no. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, native species are important.
Okay. All right. We're not gonna. We're getting nothing out of this man. Would you love me if I was an earthworm?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I wanted.
There we go. Crisis averted.
You need that coelom. You need that pseudocoelom.
So one thing that it was a meme actually, but something that I generally agree with in life after having read it is that it's pretty fun to talk to kids versus adults because adults never ask you what your 3rd favorite dinosaur is. And we've asked this question in the past on the podcast, but I'd like to ask Vikram, what's your 3rd favorite plant? And Ellen and Christian, what's your 3rd favorite animal?
3rd favorite. Do you want me to skip the first 2 and only give you the 3rd?
Oh, whatever's most natural.
Luckily, we did a bonus episode not too long ago, a Max Fun Drive bonus episode where we had to come up with a tournament of our favorite
That's
animal.
true.
So I'm trying to remember what our finalists were for that.
Oh, y'all came prepared. That's perfect.
I think my top 3, for me, I think I ended up with the capybara as my final contender, right?
I think so. And mine was the manta ray.
And I don't want to say that the capybara is my favorite animal because that just doesn't feel right. It's a great animal, but I don't know if I would say it's my favorite animal. Usually my go-to favorite animal is the pangolin. Pangolin is
Penguin's
usually
good.
number 1.
Good
for me.
choice.
It's a solid
I'm-
choice.
I'm going to leave it where it is. I'm going to leave it at its number 1 spot. Number 2, I think, is usually probably bearded vulture.
Ooh.
Excellent.
Solid.
So
Yeah.
the coveted number 3 position might be the scalyfoot snail.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait, I don't know
Yeah.
about those. Tell us more about them.
It's the closest thing we have to a dragon.
it's a so if you've played Pokemon, it's very similar to Magcargo, in the sense that it is a snail that lives in hydrothermal vents in the Indian Ocean. And because of all the iron sulfide in the water around it, their body can like synthesize the iron and attach it to its own body.
Whoa.
So the snail's like foot is covered in these iron scales, like
And
dragon scales.
Whatever you're picturing it looking like, somehow it's worse. Like it's almost, the paler ones almost have the texture of fingernails, and I'm not okay with that.
Yeah,
God.
it's
Wow,
not
that is
ideal.
incredible.
Yeah, but it's a really cool animal. But so what I think is like the funniest about that is that, okay, so it's like a snail, it's like a volcano snail covered in iron. And then you look at the Pokemon Magcargo, which is a volcano snail covered in iron. Like it's exactly the same thing. And you're like, okay, they must have designed the Pokemon based on the scalyfoot snail. This Magcargo was in the 2nd generation of Pokemon games that came out like a year before the scalyfoot snail was discovered.
Whoa.
What?
Like they called that shot so good.
Be right back looking for Mewtwo.
They were so close. They were so close because it's fire rock when
I
it
know, they
should be
almost had
fire
it.
steel, because
Mhm.
steel
Or
came
water
out in
steel,
2nd
right?
generation, or would it be rock steel?
It'll have to be fire because it's magma.
So I just
That's
looked
not
up
fire.
No, fire rock makes sense because the idea is that it's like the magma. You have slugma, and then you have the magma that cools down. It will be a rock, not steel. It'll be like obsidian. So fire rock is all right. Listen,
But it's got the
I-
iron. The
It's a
iron.
cool critter.
So I just looked up what they
iron
look
is a
like.
rock. Yeah.
So I just looked up what they look like. And incidentally, I saw they're also called the pangolin snail, or the sea pangolin.
Oh.
So
So
it makes
penguins
sense
are
that
being
it would also be in your
overrepresented in my
three.
top 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
As
Yeah.
they deserve.
Yeah, they're great. Christian, what are your top 3?
I think my number 3 is the cassowary.
That's a
Yes.
good one.
Ooh, that's a good
You
choice.
said is number 1 still the manta ray?
It is.
Okay, what's
And,
number 2?
Whale shark. Yeah.
That
Cool.
yeah, that tracks.
Cassowary is a
brand.
wide diversion from your top 2, though. That's
It
interesting.
is.
It's a pivot.
I
Yeah.
have to fight the urge to stay in the ocean at all times.
I see.
Christian's heart never really fully emerged from the ocean.
You leave and you just beg Charles Darwin to throw you back.
Please, Charles. Son.
Send me
Chuck,
back.
I need a solid.
Walk up, you run up to Charles Darwin, like Chuck, throw me in.
Put me in, coach.
It's even in his name.
You wear Marie iguana disguise. It's like Chuck.
But yeah,
Cassowary
it
is
does make-
low key one of the scariest animals.
They're horrifying.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
saw
hikey. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
studied abroad in Australia and saw a 5-foot tall one crossing the road once, and I'm just like, yeah, dinosaurs never went extinct. Like
Mhm.
I'm like we all say it, but you kind of need to see a 5-foot bird with velociraptor claws
Yeah.
to really
Exactly.
Yeah,
really cement the
they're
idea.
they're
You know-
something else.
Yeah, you're not gonna look at a little sparrow and think, "Oh yeah, dinosaurs are real." You gotta look at you gotta look at a cassowary and be like, "Oh fuck, dinosaurs are real."
Yeah, the rat types do a good job of that, except maybe the kiwi. But
He's trying.
Yeah.
Kiwi's trying.
Speaking of
All right.
kiwis, what's your favorite plant? That girl.
My
Kiwi, what did you
Segue.
guess?
I saw the segue and I'm like, I'm
that was a
doing
good
this.
one. Top notch. So you want my top 3? Okay. My first one, and I talk about this a lot till it's probably not fun anymore. But I love the bristlecone pine
Mhm.
because they're wild and they're ancient and they like have all this like genetic memory from, you know, the last ice age and before. And they're fascinating plants to me. Number 2, oh gosh, I'm struggling between like number 2 and number 3. I think number 2 and number 3 for almost the same reason. Number 2 is like the zinnia. As a landscape guy, an urban like flower guy, because they'll grow anywhere. They'll grow out of gravel or a crack in the sidewalk or whatever, and they look great. They're really impressive. But then when they're done, they're just done. Like one day they're like, I look great, and I've got all these big flowers, and the next day they're just totally dead. Which I feel that some days I'm just like,
relatable.
Like, I'm just done. I'm gonna lay down and let the earth reclaim me today. That's my goal for today.
The work week and the weekend, right there.
Yep, I'm just finished. And then my third favorite plant is yarrow. And I don't know if y'all know what yarrow is. It has these feathery leaves. They're native to everywhere from like South Texas all the way up into Canada and through the Rockies. And they'll grow as ground covers. You can like mow them down. They'll grow 4 feet tall. They grow a bunch of different colors. They're great pollinator plants, and they're useful too. They're one that like there's a compound in there that is what do they call it? It's a coagulant essentially. And so a hemostat. So like indigenous peoples throughout the Americas would use them to like treat wounds and different things like that. They're really fascinating. But then like if you eat too much of it, it just like turns your kidneys off. It's like, no, you're done. And so it's a fascinating plant with a lot of uses, and they're great in the landscape and they're great in the wild.
Solid. With the bristlecone pine, when you say that they have a lot of genetic memory, is that because the individual plants are from the last ice age, or is that there's some other reason?
So I guess I'm talking specifically with the pine bark beetle, which, you know, has caused incredible amounts of damage as they've moved back west. So they're native to the US and like throughout the Great Basin and Rockies. And then during the last ice age, they got pushed east as it got colder. Now with like global warming and climate change, they're moving quickly back into like if you drive through like Colorado or anywhere, there's just millions of dead pine trees. Like it's terrible, like just naked mountainsides, you know? And these trees that even these shorter lived pines that only live a couple hundred years, which on tree scale is, you know, not that long. They've had so many generations since the beetles moved out of that range. They don't have any of the defenses, the chemical defenses, the types of bark and things like that. So as these beetles move back, they're just like wiping them out. But there was some studies. There's a great article that came out, I think 2 years ago in PLOS One, that they did damage surveys on some of these long-lived pines, like the bristlecone and the limber pine and 2 or 3 others. And there's like almost no damage because they've only the oldest one we know of is called Methuselah, and it's about 4,900 years old. And they think there's older ones. That's just the oldest one we found and been able to like sample. They've only had just a few generations since those beetles moved out. So they still have like the DNA memory of those chemical defenses, and they haven't like evolved out yet.
Oh, that's crazy.
And so the beetles start to feed on them, and they still have like the chemical controls and things like that protect them from it.
It's like when you get kicked out of a bar and they keep your picture on the wall for like 30 years.
That guy, he's back. Get him out.
Yeah.
It's that, but it's a picture of the pine borer beetle. Like, absolutely not. Not since
That
last
was
time.
a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Vikram, Ellen, and Christian, where can people go to listen to your stuff?
So you can find Planthropology like anywhere podcasts live. I'm on all the social media places for better or worse. I am on TikTok as @theplantprof. And if you want to hear me yell about bananas, that's where you can find me doing it often.
And we're just the zoo of us. We're on all podcast platforms. We're on the Maximum Fun Network. So you can find us on MaximumFun.org and anywhere where you get podcasts. You can find us. We're also pretty active on social media. So you have a Facebook group, Twitter, Instagram. We have a really fun Discord server where everybody on there is super nice and fun to talk to. So yeah, you can pretty much find us on all those. We have a TikTok account that I like went really hard on for like a month and then was immediately like, this is too much work, and I did not make any TikToks after that. But I have it.
They're still out there.
Yeah, they're still out there floating around. They were good TikToks. It's just not super active on there, but I'd say Twitter is probably where I'm most active.
Well, that's our show. Thanks for listening. You can support the podcast as well as all of the other Wild Green Media projects across social media at patreon.com/wildgreenmemes. That's memes with an N. Until next time, I'm Rhett.
I'm Curtis.
I'm Iona.
I'm Roy.
And I'm Vikram.
I'm Ellen.
And I'm Christian.
That was a record amount of people on a sign off.
Yeah.
That was. You can support this podcast at patreon.com/wildgreenmemes.
That's memes with an M, not memes with an S.
Patrons get gifts in the mail, early episode releases, and of course, a shout out on the podcast.
This week, we would like to thank Jenna Byrne,
Colin Coppola,
Jacob Jazabek,
Kristen Tangle,
Rachel Mortison,
Brooklyn Gingras,
Julia Brown,
Kristen Swan,
Beck Worrell,
Jeffrey Wingard,
Megan Bailey,
Kimberly Sarkin,
Jennifer Gorman,
Callum Lawless,
Amanda Sellers.
Cassidy Blair,
Somebody seemed to smash their keyboard because this is not their name. JRAZTEAZ tick, Jurassic. It's like a Jurassic Tasmanian tick.
And we're not just reading that weird. We can see their real name here on their address.
Followed directly by use your outside voice.
Lily Thompson, Darcy Johnson,
Ewan Hill,
Anna McVeigh,
Daniel J. Quackenbush,
Holly Norton,
Trinity Wilton,
Laurel Brandy,
Kirsten O'Brien,
Becca Hanna,
Megan Crump,
Jordan Jackson,
Dwayne Jones,
Kyle Weaver,
MBB,
Morgan Boyer,
Della Leicht,
Jothan Hicks,
Cassandra Abarzwa,
Joe Johnson, Christy Casipio,
Rathgate Reptiles,
Lauren Aguilera,
Jim Russell,
Alyssa,
Jack Graves,
Elise,
Matt,
Kristen Love,
Marissa Weinecke,
Tina Matta,
Katie and Biscuit,
Jamie Alfisher,
Dragon Rachel,
Belly Haggett,
Kelly Bierman,
Casey Regnier,
Alexander Phillips,
Muir,
Colleen Cunott,
Allison Michelle Cundiff,
Abigail Kimball,
Krista,
Alice Ogden Nussbaum,
Marissa Oren,
Amanda Modogno,
Taylor Pinnock,
Shannon O'Brien,
Gabriel Kaminer,
Julia Gulia,
Amira Gizwask,
Caitlin,